We are very grateful for your time this evening. This is a series of conversations we are going to have over the next couple of months. There was a topic we were supposed to start with. I won't tell you what it is, but we thought that that topic should come after the elections, if you get the tenor of what I'm driving at. But these are private sector focused conversations that essentially would start beating the pathways for the next administration. We think it's better to start with the most influential, if not the most impactful event of this year, which is the pandemic. I'm sure there have been many conversations about the impact of the pandemic on every facet of our lives, and I think that we wouldn't have chosen a better topic. We are doing this with GIZ, whose representatives are here. Richard, you want to say something? Not this time. All right. Well, they have been part and parcel of our country's development, and so I think it's befitting that if they're supporting initiatives like this, we give it all our due, which is the reason why we're having this conversation today. Our speakers are already very well versed on this in the subject, but they are not going to be the only ones speaking. Almost everyone here will be allowed to make contributions. George, I'm sure that's what it is really. I've seen the former Deputy Minister of Finance. I made sure she came. It's not easy getting people of this caliber into conversations like this. It doesn't mean that you don't matter. All of you matter as well. She happens to have very interesting views about our economy. And at some point, we'll call on her to give us an external view of all of these rather disorderly aspects of our global life. Let me leave it now with George. You probably want to invite. There will be other dignitaries who are here who will be acknowledged by the way. So George, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Franklin. You have actually, let's show some love to Franklin Kujo, setting the pace for us for this evening in our policy dialogue on COVID-19 and its impact on Ghanaian businesses. We'll set the ball rolling with our distinguished panelists who are here to join us for the discussion. They will have their say and we'll also come back to them. So I'll start with the Chief Executive of the Chamber of Bulk Oil Distributors, Senor Hosi Saram. Ladies and gentlemen, with a round of applause, let's welcome Senor Hosi on stage here. And then also, Madam Dr. Edith Dankwa, she's the founder of the Ghana Economic Forum. You can, anywhere you want to sit. After Beijing, we are seeing a lot. Let's show some love to our women who have brought all of us this far. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome David Ofosu-Bete, managing partner at AB and David Business Law Firm. Let's show some love for him as well. I can also see Dr. Joseph Obeng, he's president of the Ghana Union of Trade Association, is here with us, Guta. When it comes to advocating for the traders, you wouldn't miss out on that one. Doc, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Mabel Simpson is team lead at MSense. Round of applause for her. Do I have Inokusu Jetua here with us?
Yes, he's here.
Okay, and also Navlidan Ujani, he is Chief Executive of the Agriculture and More Limited as well. Let's welcome him as well. And it looks like we have a full house with respect to whoever you can think about in trade, finance, economy, business owners, traders, and all those things. So we're going to look at basically how these businesses have survived COVID-19 as well, and going forward, what are some of the strategies they've adopted to take them forward in this economy. So these are my distinguished panelists here, and this is going to be very, very interactive. So I will first start with Mr. Hosi. And I'll ask you guys first to give a brief 5 minutes opening and presentation, and then I'll come back to the Q&A. Then we'll go to the audience and come back to you. So, Sonia, let me start first with you as you make your first open shot. And I'm told that we are supposed to work within 1 hour 30 minutes. So anyone who goes beyond time, I'm just going to catch you in. So let me start. Yeah, we'll start whilst he will join us. So don't worry, let's start. He will join us whilst we go on. So Senor, let me have your first open 5 minutes remark.
Uncovered on strategizing. I mean, have we learned our lessons? I mean, no, it's still early this year. Let's talk about a second wave, whether it will reach Ghana or not. We don't know. But for businesses out there, for you, what are the lessons going forward?
Well, for me, I think the critical thing is how COVID is fast-tracking us into the fourth industrial revolution. And it's something I've actually been discussing for quite a while now. We've not been prepared. Typical Ghana, we are very reactive and never being proactive. But it creates new opportunities for us. It's changed the way education is running. I can see my former floor mate here, Professor Kokwe, is now running everything online. So there's a change, there's a paradigm shift in our general approach to things. And for us as business folks, it's quite a rude awakening. Some have been prepared, but by and large, as a country, we've hardly been prepared for such a major shock. But God has been good to Ghana. COVID has not had a devastating effect that it would rather have had, or what we've observed in other countries. So that positions Ghana in a place of strength. To turn this particular advantage or less disruptive impact into something of global competitiveness. And unfortunately, I'm not too sure we are positioning ourselves to take advantage of that. Another thing that I think is quite important is another rude awakening to policymakers, and for those of us in the policy space, we have to keep rethinking the structures of our economy. It's reminding us that when push comes to shove, countries would definitely look within. Vietnam, Thailand, India banned the export of certain commodities because they had to prioritize the interests of their people. What could Ghana really do? You know, we're nowhere on that kind of map. And when it became that critical, we were short on certain key supplies. So there's a need for us to look within, take local content a lot more seriously, build local industries, support them right, not what I would say more of the Photoshop kind of support we give industries in this country. You know, and build industries that can help drive and grow and sustain us when it is most critical. And these are the things that, for me, from a policy side, keeps reshaping my general thinking. So in summary, the fourth industrial revolution thing, the need for us to really build our human resource capacity right to be able to compete in that future that is very present today. And also for us also rethink our economic philosophies and building local competences to survive going forward.
Thank you, Senor. Please forgive me, I missed out on one of our panelists, Madam Charity Dupont, if she's here, CEO of Monad Foods. Please, let's welcome her. Forgive me, please. So whilst we welcome her, I'll move to another person in terms of being in the real economy, and those people down there as well. They are impacted by whatever policies that at the top level government will take. MSEMS as well. How that, if you look at other areas, it looks like consumption went up, other areas consumption as well, debt as well. For you, how has it been like in terms of how COVID affected you, and going forward, what do you want those policymakers to do for you?
Interestingly, we had our good days with the pandemic, and we had bad days, but we didn't shut down. During the lockdown, we saw ourselves working because we realized that it created new opportunities, business opportunities for us. We're producing face masks and then some items which kept us in business. So it also told us that you always need to restructure. I mean, when challenges present itself, you look at the opportunities and then you take advantage of it. And then also we need to look at our skilled labor, that's our workforce, because it's one of the many challenges we face. And it's either we do well in that area or, I mean, it's going to affect manufacturing in the country. So the pandemic, I mean, bad for certain people or industries, but for our industry or for where I find myself, it was good.
Can I say that for you, just like other businesses as well, you try to re-strategize to take advantage of the opportunity?
Yes, we did. We did. We re-strategized because, I mean, we make our main production, or our main products lines are laptop bags and handbags and clothing. People were not going out anymore. People, I mean, were stuck at home, but everyone needed a face mask. So if you look at, and we sort of so now had to house our production staff. I mean, it was cost for us, but then it was the best because during lockdown, there's no movement. But then once you're housing them, then you know that they're not going to step out. So then you're looking at the health side of it, making sure that the products you're sending out are of good quality and also they are not infected. So, I mean, risk, high cost, but we're still in business.
Let me come to another business operator, Madam Charity Edupon as well. There's talk about the economy picking up in terms of the numbers and all those things. Has it really impacted on in terms of consumption for you?
Thank you. For us, it caused us to start looking within. About 25%, 25 to 30% of our produce were going out. We used to export to Europe and America. But due to this, most of the goods were not moving at all. So we had to start looking within. And we began to realize that we haven't actually even scratched the face of what people need from us here. So we had to really now step out there and look for the people who are looking. In fact, they were calling us. So we had to get ready for them. And you know, we all know that we were not prepared for this at all. And we work with farmers. Sometimes you tell them they have to store in a certain way so that you get a certain quality of raw materials, but they don't understand. But at this point, they began to realize and understand that it is even safer for them so that they don't have to throw too much away. And we had to process and store for them, even for now. Now, let me take something like onion. It's selling at about 1,500 a sack. But at the time, they kept cautioning us that it's going to be expensive, it's going to be expensive. So we bought a lot, processed into flakes to store, and now we are smiling to the bank. So it really caused us to look within and also satisfy the Ghanaian customer before we look out.
You talked about smiling to the bank. I wanted to find out from you in terms of support from the banks. I mean, I engage the banks with them that listen, we are lending. You know, we've done about over 20 billion Ghana cedis since the lockdown to now. But I was asking, which sectors were these lending going to? Is it going to people like you?
Yes, my bank did well. ABSA did great for us. We had loans with them. They gave us a long time to restructure and do things right. They gave us 3 whole months without deductions, so we could do other things and then come back later when things are okay. So they did great for us. They held on. We had loans in China with factories that had changed from producing our kind of packaging materials into making face masks, nose masks, and sanitizers. So we had to move one factory to the other, and up till now, some of our packaging materials are not even here. So it caused us to now look for places that could help us source it right here. And it's amazing that some of the things are right here, but we are always looking at.
Let me go to Mr. Fosidote.
To begin with, when she was talking about smiling to the bank, I thought I could do with some of the money. But on a more serious note, I'm in the business of helping businesses take advantage of opportunities. And so let me talk from that angle, and I'll come to your question. One of the things I saw with COVID is that many businesses were not prepared, like Senor said. But you can't prepare for COVID. So when I say business were not prepared, it's simply because they didn't have the usual business continuity plans. Even for those who had, you couldn't have, imagine that it will come from a pandemic. The challenge is that when the pandemic hit, many didn't know how to activate the business continuity plans in terms of ensuring that first you are sustaining the business in its current state, two, preventing deterioration, and three, strategizing to take advantage of any opportunity that may emerge. And many businesses failed in that regard. And just to give you an example, one of the very large corporates we represent had a situation where they had not managed their contracts in such a way that people were defaulting and using force majeure as an excuse for defaulting, which leads to losses. So that's one way I look at it. The other way to look at it is, I found that many of the businesses that we advise, and this is not just businesses, but maybe even the public sector, we seem to think that one event is the only thing happening. And just give me a minute to explain that. Everybody has been talking about COVID since March, and COVID, and this is why we are here, we are talking about COVID. The COVID is just not the only thing happening. If you look at COVID as the only thing happening, it may be a mistake. Let me just give you a couple of examples. Between 2015 and now, the banking sector had challenges until it was restructured. So businesses slowed down as a result of those who were relying on certain type of banks. So the financial sector had challenges. Once the financial sector was stabilizing, you had a situation where COVID hits. Then you have a situation where other global events is happening. So COVID is only a trigger. And businesses tend to focus on the COVID effect to plan their long-term risk strategizing. I think that's another thing that businesses ought to look at. In terms of the question regarding whether the financing houses are lending to the wrong sector, etc., I think they are like any other business. They tend to be too conventional. I think with COVID, the biggest lesson is that businesses must learn to be very unconventional.
Okay, let me come back to the gentleman, Mr. Jetwa from there.
And does it appear that government, and I know in the developed economies and even New York, school owners are still battling with mayors and governors to reopen the school. Recently they have to shut down and all the rest. Do you think that they've been fair because now your teachers are at home and all the rest? How are you paying them? Has the policy response been good or that bad to the educational sector?
Thank you very much. In terms of education, and more specifically private education, we've been very hit by this, let's say, COVID. Since the announcement or the closure of schools, we have not been able to, go to school. And because of that, we need to also honor certain statutory payment. In terms of policy direction, government has not really thought of how best these private schools that contribute to over 41% in terms of pre-tertiary education delivery will be sustained. Because all is about, we are thinking about the public schools. We have not been able to give in, let's say, regulatory flexibility. As we speak now, some of the proprietors are being prosecuted because they've not been able to honor some of these statutory payments, such as SNAIT contributions and all that. And we were looking at how best government can even come in and give us some period of extension, that at least since schools are closed down and these people take their resources or their income from daily participation of the education, and they are not in business at this point, they have to be re-looked at and having this kind of regulatory flexibility. As we speak now, let's look at the education in context. We know we have the curriculum, the instructions, and the assessment. So when those bespoke, let's say, policies and platforms that has been made from individual schools that they are trying to use online programs and all that, doesn't really, let's say, materialize or enforce the delivery of education. Because education is not just like giving the content. The feedback is also one of the areas that we have to look at it. But it has not been look at it. Government opens the stimulus package that private schools can apply, and it is out there. It's over 20% that has even received, let's say, a meager amount, and that money cannot be used to even run home about. So it is like, that's why we've been hearing that private schools are pushing for school reopening and that, but that's a very dicey aspect, because if you look at COVID protocols, in terms of infrastructure, government is not having that. And if allow government schools or students to go to school as we speak now, there's possibility of, let's say, the outbreak of the disease. But private schools also do. So it becomes very difficult for government to say that, okay, let the private schools go to school and let the public schools also be in the home at this point in time.
Do I get from you, sorry to just to cut in, but do I get from you that you wanted more incentives to the private sector, a special dispensation for your sector, and that is what you wanted, because other schools outside, they're looking at how they can move to their tech space and still reach out to people and people pay and all the rest. But it appears that in your case, you're up and arms and government still has to come in.
No, let us understand the dynamics of private education in Ghana very well. We have three categorization of private education. We have the elite groups that constitute over 5%. And then we have the mission and affiliates or religious faith schools, that is 25%. The major percentage is the low fee paying schools. And these low fee paying schools are scattered across the country, and they are over 70%. In terms of infrastructure, let's say the technological aspect that you are talking about is highly costly as we speak now. So even before you can do that, those countries that you are referring to, government partner with the telcos and other telecom, let's say, networks to even reduce the data usage. But here be our country, we have not witnessed such things. So these are some of the policies that you were looking for, that the government can even come in and say that, okay, if you have, let's say you are delivering education, these are some of the platforms that can be used to deliver proper education. We are not talking about just sitting on TV, then allowing children to watch it and say that you are delivering education. Because education is three components. The curriculum itself that you are delivering, whether it is theory or, let's say, practical aspect, and the instruction. So there should be a connectivity between the learner and the deliverer, that's the teacher, and its assessment. So if you just sit on TV, let's say on radio, and give out content, and you cannot have any medium to receive feedbacks that will help you to put, let's say, mediations and solutions that will help the child to progress. So as we speak now, all what the children are doing cannot be put together as, let's say, learning outcomes so that the child can move on. When school resumes, we have to go back and do that. And that is why we are saying that government should have come in and give us some of the policies, interventional plans, to even sustain these 70% of schools, and let's say come out with, let's say, one uniform, bespoke, let's say, platform with it.
You have some educationists in the audience that have seen their faces. Also get your thoughts on what is the best way out, even at the tertiary level. So, well, Mr. Mujondi, I look at the numbers, and the statistical service tells me that the cultural sector is growing. Whether COVID or no COVID, people have to eat. Does it appear that when it comes to the agric space, they've been immune to this COVID?
Thank you. So I'll just use that as an opportunity to talk about what we went through, especially in regards to COVID-19. So we are an integrated agribusiness, but we currently add value to yam. So we converted into yam chips, yam slices, and yam flour. So what happened was that immediately we had the opportunity or the advantage of the initial announcement. So the announcement that gave a pre-information to the public that we were going to have a lockdown or a shutdown actually enabled people to do a lot of buying. So it got us excited, and we had an increase in demand. And then the lockdown kicked in and everything just slowed, because there was very little movement. You can't really go to many of the shops and all that. And then after the lift, demand started increasing again. So for us, it's been kind of topsy-turvy when it comes to demand and supply. But one of the key things as well that we also went through had got to do with the supply part. Fortunately for us, we grow the yam that we use. And the main reason is because we want to have visibility on the entire supply chain. So with regards to that aspect, in being able to get our yam tubers, it wasn't that difficult to be able to source the yam because we had the yam. The difficulty was in getting the yam to Accra because we are currently doing the value addition in Accra to test the markets and then as part of the product development phase. And that is something we've been doing for about 3 to 4 years now. And fortunately, that actually worked to our advantage because getting the yam here was at the time, it was a bit difficult because one, truckers were not moving because they didn't want to get into areas where there was a lockdown because there was this perception of you could go there and get infected. The second thing also had to do with the fact that in the various districts, there was also a lot of measures that had been put in place. So for instance, from the Quantanal district, when you leave the district and you come back, they want you to go into isolation. And that's one thing that the drivers didn't want to do. The third thing had to do with the number of trucks available. Now, the number of people who would want to come are very few. So what that means is that you have a greater demand for transportation services, but the supply of the transportation service is very low. So what that did was it shot the price of transportation of the yam tubers to Accra. And that was where we had a major challenge because at some point in time, I actually had to take off from Accra because fortunately I had a permit to be able to enable me to move around. So we had to move from Accra only to get to Peki and get to know that they finally got a truck which was charging almost double the amount, but they had been able to put it back, so we came back. So that's what saved us. So in terms of staffing, because of the initial announcement, 3 of our staff left Accra and went back to their villages. Why? Because they were also afraid to be locked up in one place, and that was their view. They don't want to be kept in one place and and kind of restricted movement. So we had to now find out, and fortunately, a lot of us also know what is entailed in the processing. So we now had to suit up and get to it and get working. Our operational costs also increased as a result because as you're bringing the yams into town, you are paying more for it. And then also we couldn't allow our staff to go by public transport again. So we'd have to go pick them, transport them to the processing unit. After that, take them back, and it happens almost every time we had to do the production. So that's in general what the kind of effects that we, for instance, went through. But in terms of sales, at least before then, at least we had about 60 to 70% increase in demand, and then later it's slumped a bit. But after COVID-19, we've had after the lockdown, probably a prophecy. After the lockdown, we've had a steady increase, and truthfully, it's currently better than pre-COVID times.
So what I'm getting from you people is that for those in the trade business and even agribusiness as well, yes, of course, demand picked up, but also cost as well went up. Was there any balancing effect as well?
Yeah, so at that point in time also, it's difficult. You cannot increase your prices because it's a humanitarian situation that you find yourself in. So you cannot increase your prices, so you definitely need to find a way of balancing your expenditure lines. Probably there are certain things that you would have normally done that you have to cut back on, and then probably find other ways of doing them. And that's one of the things that also happened. But fortunately for us, our packaging is we're able to source it locally. So our vacuum bags, we still had access to the vacuum bags, and we didn't really have that much of a challenge in terms of packaging. But that's also another area that probably for businesses, because when you look at the packaging costs for the various agribusinesses which are coming up now, packaging cost is very high, and it's mainly because you have to meet certain minimum order quantities. You have to buy molds for each color, for each color of your packaging material, and it makes it so expensive. If you are an agribusiness, an SME, and you have a minimum order quantity of about 20, 30, 50,000 pieces of packaging material, then
I'll be coming back to you again, and as we go to the audience and we come back to our panel, one interesting thing has happened during this COVID that nobody's complaining about, us looking internally to source most of our stuff. Where lies this argument of Ghanaians have developed taste for foreign preference, and nobody was complaining. How long can we contain or sustain this taste for things being produced here, PPs being produced here, loose mat being produced here, and not being produced in China or even in London and all the rest? What happened to that? I'll be coming to get some answers for our panelists. But good time. It was also good for you as well. People were buying and all the rest. So it was China, even in London and all the rest. What happened to that? I'll be coming to get some answers for our panelists. But good time. It was also good for you as well. People were buying and all the rest. So it was a good thing for you.
If you recall, panic buying has set in. People did not know what was going to happen the following day. The questions that have come to the trading community was whether we will be able to sustain ourselves. Let me start by saying that before the information came to Ghana or to the world that there was a disease called COVID, we, the traders, were in the know because we always talk to our suppliers in China almost every night. Where people are sleeping, their day has started. And so you call them, when are you delivering the goods? They say, you don't know what is happening. There's a disease here, we cannot produce now. Our workers are going to their hometowns and all that. And this way, the information trickled down on us. And eventually, you have the former information from China. Our deposits have been locked because we do pay deposits before goods are produced. So at that time, your supplier is telling you, please, we say we have to lock ourselves up because of the infectious manner the disease is. So people are afraid to come to work. All this information had come to us. Ordering patterns have changed. Delivery dates are not even known to us, and yet our deposits have been locked. The disease will eventually affect other countries, and then airports were shut. 60% of the importers travel physically to buy their goods, consolidate them, and then ship them before they follow it to Ghana and clear it. These 60% of importers were made redundant because they cannot travel and do their legitimate work again. This is how this thing have actually affected us. And then Ghanaian media has started even asking questions. When are we going to be able to sustain the goods that you have brought? Then we said that we are predicting if the lockdown in China continue for the next 3 months, it means that by June, July that year, we are going to have a serious shortage of goods because we wouldn't know where to get the goods from to replenish our diminishing stocks. And looking from within, the manufacturing companies here in the South region, not only in Ghana, cannot provide even 10% of our import requirements. Then there was a serious panic in the nation. Then came the disease itself to Ghana. And then lockdown came, protocols and restrictions have been given to people. Social activities have gone down completely. Some companies have been shut down due to the nature of their businesses. Ordering patterns have changed because now ordering have shifted towards consumable and medical related products. People, traders as we are, always have to realign ourselves and find how we can still survive even within the pandemic era. You want me to stop?
No, go ahead. I thought you were wrapping up, so don't worry.
Yeah, because this thing affected the trading community more, and probably I may not be a talkative, but be able to give you itinerary of events, what had happened. So under the lockdown and all that, if you recall, issues of demurrages have come because we're completely in our rooms and our ships have landed. How are we going to pay our demurrages? It came also that turnover have come down because people purchasing power have gone down because of inactivity at those times and all that. How are we going to service our loans and all that? These things became very difficult. If I have to continue, I'll take other people's. But I know once we are going some of these things, and what have even come as a new normal is the e-commerce that have come because of these protocols and all that, to urge the most of the traditional businesses also out of business. So I think I will have to end here because the signals are getting more, so others can talk.
No, definitely. I know you have a lot. We'll get back to you again.
I have a whole lot because this one affected the trading community so much.
Madam Dr. Idimdamka will have the last word on our panel here, then we go back to the audience. We want to make this as very interactive as we can for this little time that we have. So, Madam, I mean, I know you've been involved in the Ghana Economic Forum and all the rest, but again, having found your time in the media space before, have we told the cover story right in the Ghanaian media? The shocks, the fear of God in people, and what has been the effect of that?
I wish I had a whole day because the BFT story itself would take us a whole day to discuss. Being a media organization, we cover, let me wear my BFT hat. We cover business and finance. And so our revenue, or we used to do a lot with the financial sector, banks and non-bank financial institutions. So the cleanup impacted negatively on our business because about 40% of our revenue was dependent on the financial sector. And so for us, 2020 was a big year for us, the turnaround, because the past from 2018, 19, 17 have been a very bad year. And thank God we survived because we are an innovative company or media organization. And so 2020 was a big year for us. And then first quarter, COVID hits. But I think that as a result of the crisis that we had gone through, we had that experience. We're also prepared indirectly because we were in the digital space. Our revenue dipped by about 60%. And so, how are you going to pay salaries? How are you going to pay your costs? You buy newsprints, we have production, production line, printing press. So you had to pay and be sure that you're running. But because as a business, we had indirectly prepared because of the crisis we went through, we had cleaned up as well. And so we're ready for COVID. What did the lockdown bring? It brought about challenges, and quickly we had to think, look through the business, how do we turn things around? Because next month we have to pay salaries. What do we do? So we quickly had to push the soft copies of the Business and Financial Times, the digital version. We had that about I think we're the first media to bring that digital copy. And we were not pushing it because the market was not ready for it. They always wanted the hard copies. So you had to, yes, we use it as a complementary, you buy the hard copy and then we give you a copy. We had few companies within the banking sector that were subscribing to the digital version anyway. So we quickly, because we were prepared for it indirectly, we quickly had to push the digital version of the newspaper. And then subscribers jumped at it because nobody wanted to hold the hard copy. Although, I mean, in the midst of all the crisis, people still wanted the hard copy, so we had to print. And it got to a point I said, look, I mean, let's just do 3 times a week. Instead of coming out every day, let's do Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And fortunately for us, I mean, we opened another window of opportunity because the cost of producing that digital version is so minute as compared to the cost of printing the hard copies and distributing it. Now you have a wider range, so you can distribute more than you distribute the hard copies, and people, as many people as possible, could get your copies. Even those outside this country could fetch a copy of Business and Financial Times. So it came as an opportunity for us, and we're still enjoying it. Even during that time, it was just the first month that we did half salaries, and our staff, our team agreed. I mean, and then subsequently we moved on to full salaries, and we had to even bring in more hands. You know, we employed few people to join us to work. So we have a good story to tell. The media, as you said, I mean, we're always talking about others. So attention doesn't come on us. When we are suffering, even when we are suffering, we suffer. We are silently, you know, silently, and nobody really pays attention to that. But media, I know, really suffered. And for us, or for organizations that didn't really have, and it taught us a lot, that our people are capital, and we don't take them for granted. Those who had really managed their human resource well, they were quiet, you wouldn't hear about what had happened. But if you didn't manage them well, especially with information, sharing information and letting them understand where you are, and you take things for granted, they assume everything is okay. So in times of crisis or in hardship, they feel that you don't want to share, and that you are enjoying wherever you are, and you have neglected them. And so they go public, and they wash your dirty linen in public. So these are things that we learned, I mean, during the process. So for us, COVID, like my sister rightly said, we didn't go to the bank smiling, but it helped us to look at business differently. We, yes, covered the business community, well, we do that well, but I don't think it was well understood. Fora like this, you know, would get, like I'm speaking, if I hadn't had this opportunity, nobody would have appreciated what we had gone through. So you can only read in the papers with all the figures, yes, 77,000 people lost their jobs, 70% of people, you know, were on half salaries and all that. But you will not appreciate it well, especially if you're an employee and you're being paid at the end of the month. But if you're a business owner and you're home and you're crying and you're thinking about where the next revenue or income will come from, I mean, who can you share this with? What platform, what better platform can you get to share this with? Even sometimes
apart from your pillow.
Apart from your pillow. How can you articulate this well to policymakers for them to appreciate that, hey, look, we are suffering. Although we are out there writing and reporting and covering you, we are suffering. I had one, I will not mention names, but I have one, how do I put it?
Let's call that person a friend.
A friend visiting me about a month or two ago. And the person was so concerned that we were not covering, BNFT wasn't covering all the political parties. And I said, look, I mean, we're a business paper now, we're running this paper as a business. We do so well, and I showed the person, you know, the example of what we have done, samples of what we've done over the years. I said, we've done so well. But the fact is that, by default, we find ourselves in a situation where we have to project this particular project. I'm trying to, as much as possible, stay away from trouble. You understand? Yes. But you know, how many of you, I said, look, as a business owner, as a CEO of that company at that time, I came to you, I engaged, I said, I need support. We are running economic forums. Support, come and support us. Not by giving us money, but by speaking to the business community for them to appreciate. Listen to them when they vent their anger. No, nobody listens to me. And I said, no, I'm running a business. I'm not playing politics. I'm running a business. But because you don't go out there speaking, no, he understood me at the end of the day. But because we don't have the opportunity to go out there to speak, nobody understands you. I am running a business at the end of the day. Businesses are running businesses at the end of the day. They want their businesses to thrive. What kind of enabling environment are we giving businesses to thrive? We will report as it is. I mean, fake news. We have fake news sometimes. But then beyond the fake news, we put the information out there. But please listen to us. Listen to businesses. Because businesses may be suffering. Let's listen a bit.
Doc, thank you so much, and I promise to make this whole thing more interactive as much as possible as we bring in. And I'll come back to you in picking your thoughts on this fear about a second wave and how are you all planning for that, whether the shock will be. And there's even this talk about COVID fatigue, you know. I mean, that's what is going on out there. People are tired. I mean, what should come, should come. That's just by the way. So, ladies and gentlemen, we open the floor now to bringing you in this whole discussion. Let me first start with Madame Monacote. There's a few quick remarks for her, and then I move to some other few persons I know. Then I also open up to everyone, and then we'll come back to them and go back to you again.
I think this is a great opportunity. I thank Imani and GIZ for bringing the most important people in Ghana together, which is the private sector, to discuss their experiences. I think from this we are learning a lot of lessons as well. It's important that we listen to those who drive private sector in this country. There has been major disruption. Just listening to everyone here on the panel, there's been major disruption. Some have taken it in a positive way. Some don't know what to do. Some have just let go. There were certain sectors of the economy, like the mining sector, that wasn't hurt too much. Costs, take your time. Costs did go up. Managing people on a campsite was problematic, but in terms of production, that continued. In the gold sector, for example, prices even went up. So that was great. So there were difficulties, but there was risk management to make sure that things continued. But definitely once your costs go up, in fact, from listening to some of the people here, if your costs went up, but your business didn't go belly up, you thank God. Because if you could just cover those costs, fine. If you had the support from your banks and other institutions, even though I do hear that the regulatory people were not that forthcoming in the education sector. All this tells us that people are definitely resilient, but institutions clearly are weak. This has shown up so much vulnerability. We've always talked about inclusiveness, but we didn't see it happen this time. If I just use ESG, the measurement, environment, societal, and corporate governance measurement for investments, I find that we in Ghana are lacking. We didn't have the governance, and I talk about corporate governance structures, to support what had happened. We saw management running helter-skelter. I guess board members were also now coming up to speed with what had happened. But I think we all forgot what happened a few years ago, Ebola. We got ready for that. But I guess that didn't come, so we didn't experience it to know the fallouts. This one actually hit us, and therefore the fallouts were there. I believe that going forward, and even now, the lessons themselves are going to help us. We are already seeing economies picking up again. There may be a second wave, as George has said, and that may create another situation where instead of a V shape for recovery, we may see a W, a second recovery. But I believe that in all of this, there will always be a recovery because people will start to think outside the box and find different ways of doing things. I'm glad to hear about local raw materials being the next point of call, in fact, using them. The value addition, there's no doubt. There's ADB, African Development Bank, have always spoken about the cassava plant being a very important plant that can do so much for Ghana and Africa. Excuse me. But we've always, and this is not to say that traders should not trade, but we've always found the easy way out. Shortcuts, just import it. Now we know for sure that we need to safeguard our own, we need to create our own supplies, and in fact harness our own demand as well. So I thank you all for the experiences, and I think it speaks to lessons for the future.
I think I saw Chuma Kobwa, and I want to put the quest gone for the rest of the year for the Q1 and all the rest. Are they coming, or now you see people, now that the economies are picking up, government and private sector are moving outside for their supplies? So Chuma Kobwa, AGI is around. Yes, so industries, are you picking up? Are the demand going up? Or now that you came in to save us, now we've neglected you and back to the foreign goods?
The business barometer survey we did in the third quarter, which was also assessing the impact of the COVID, we saw something very interesting. First of all, in the second quarter, the confidence level really dropped. In the third quarter, it's actually inched up a bit. So it means that recovery was taking place, and demand is gradually growing. If you compare to the second quarter, where demand was virtually reduced and affected production locally, the third quarter saw some significant improvement. So in terms of recovery, we are gradually recovering. We also asked a question of how long it will take the companies to recover. And about 80% of them believe that all things being equal by middle of next year. So it's going to take that long to recover. This was also based on the assumption that by the end of the year, everything would have been brought to normal. But as what we are experiencing now, the second wave happening in other countries, we don't know how by the end of the year things are going to happen. So we are not too sure whether this projected recovery period will be so. Now, you were asking whether we are taking advantage of the situation and whether demand, we are able to produce to meet the demands. Is that a question?
And more of long-term demand as well. The demand is skewed towards COVID, lockdown restrictions. Now that the economies are opening up, are people switching to China for supplies that are looking internally?
Well, I mean, the COVID situation taught us a good lesson that we really needed to produce locally to feed the local market. So demand pattern was changing a bit, and people were able to take advantage of it, those producing certain critical essential products. Now that the recovery is happening, one would have expected that it should continue like that. But we also appreciate that in the short run, you cannot change all factors of production. So overnight, you can't really change to produce all the goods you need to supply the market. So that is a challenge that we have. Even though people are appreciating the need for us to produce locally and supply the market, the situation does not lend itself to overly change the production and feed the market. So you see the demand being there, you see the need for it, but our system has not encouraged local production to the extent that you can suddenly change the production pattern to produce more locally than importing. So imports are still going on. The recovery, of course, manufacturing is also growing a little bit, but I think it's growing at the same pace that we had before. It's not the case that as a result of the COVID, we are now producing more than we were producing before, or we are now importing less. Patterns hasn't changed. I think that we need to invest more in manufacturing to be able to really change patterns when situation of this nature happens.
The budget is oil, and I've seen that good prices or petroleum prices have been fairly stable on the market, and I know this is something that Senior will also be interested in, and as a consumer, I'm excited. What are the real challenges ahead for us? If you also look at export earnings, we lost almost about $1 billion because of low crude prices as well. Should we be that excited because of how COVID is impacting us?
What? To talk about somebody's business and not my business. Because
you can mix the two, don't worry.
That's why I'm surprised Franklin is not on the panel to actually speak for us also. Because we are also operating a business and we have always never made profit. So you have a situation as a think tank, bashing government, so you're not part of any target for businesses. And even if it was available, you wouldn't take it, because then it becomes difficult for you to say that your COVID intervention for the public is not even well thought through. You couldn't do that. So it's been a very challenging period for people like us to survive. You have projects that are funded by external sources and they just cancel them. So you have to look to where you can cut at the top to feed those beneath, to ensure that the business continue, to ensure that you can continue to work as you have programmed. So your prediction that there could be a second wave, we don't welcome it, we're praying against, because that will be much challenging for many of the civil society groups. We may not have anybody to talk to in the next coming year if it continues, because we'll be squeezed so much that we won't have funding to be able to operate or function. So that is our side of the situation. But for the industry, you do know what has happened to the price. The businesses that are actually surviving are the government owned, because then they can pool resources from other places to sustain the GMPCs, the regulators and all of that. All the other businesses are cutting down. They are sacking people with trenches. So big impact, and these are big spenders. If one person loses a job in the oil and gas industry, you can imagine how much the extended family has lost, because they have the deep pocket and they're losing their jobs. So the impact at that level is quite high. The recovery hasn't been quick. We've seen prices move up marginally. It hasn't been quick. And again, you can also wish that crude prices pick up quickly, because an industry begins to suffer a double dose of that. So the survival instincts really have been cutting expenditure, suspending rig activity offshore, and that also has impact on government revenue, which can also be used to salvage industry. So for the oil industry, we can play around the figures we have now, because it goes up, everybody else suffers. And some few people will lose jobs more if it stays that low. So we can hope that it stays at the marginal cost level to sustain the global economy into the future. But we don't see prices escalating in the next couple of months.
In your presentation, you talked about
Ben, you put me on the spot again. In fact, we're not going to tell our story, but we've been suffering silently. We lost about 4 founders. And Senor is laughing at me because I wanted Senor to help us as well. And he's done well, by the way. So you should be looking at Senor. Senor is a very good source of inspiration and support for the CSOs. So he would. Yeah, but we lost about 3, and I'll say 3.5 funders, major funders. We had to pivot the business around having permanent staff. We have just about 3 permanent staff now. 1 administrator who does everything. This program, we have seen, she has to organize everything. as well as human resource, and as well as event management as well. Then we have an accounts officer, and then myself. The others are now internal consultants. What it means is that once we have jobs to do, and some of them are here. Carl is an internal, he's worked marvelously well on this project, by the way. Everything you're seeing here. And then we had to use our fellows as well. Professor Poplin is on this project as well. He is a big man. And then we have Tia Champon. So we have carefully navigated the waters. In fact, we used to, we had the bus where we would ferry our staff from, because of where we are, and just meet them about 2/3 of their transport. We decided that we'll cut the number of days that they come to work. Instead of Monday to Friday, we're now doing Monday to Wednesday. And even that we are beginning to think we can actually work from home. Because what we sell, we only sell ideas. And these ideas can be traded across wavelengths and we can get done. But certainly it's crucial. For GIZ that came along, I probably don't know if I'm going to pay the rest of the workers better. So GIZ, we are grateful to you. The businesses here, I'm hearing you very well, charity. As I hear you speak about it, I mean, these are some of the things we want to do. We want to be pro-business and then start looking at the opportunities within that space as well. But I put Senya on the spot because Senya has been a pillar personally and as well as support for the business. Thank you.
I hear there's complaining that, listen, we can't get access to funding. You look at the Bank of Ghana data and you are told that about 20 billion has been given out, if I'm right, since COVID and now. What sectors or which sectors are these funding going? And what do I have to do as a business to reposition myself to get funding from you? The rep from the Ghana Association of Banks. Mr. Wan, help us out.
And thank you for inviting me. I was enjoying the show until this time. When I heard all the good news about what the banks have been doing, and truly, George, in all our interactions, I've made this point very clear that people are not talking too much about the banking industry because we were extremely prepared for something like this. People are saying that we changed to digital platforms, but the platforms were already built. Except that human nature, it was so difficult getting people to switch. But during COVID, we have no choice, and we all had to move. On the funding, during COVID, the most sensible thing, if I should use it, advice for banks to do, is to close the taps. Excuse me, let me. Is to close the taps. But what did banks do? We met as a group, and this time all 23 banks in one room and said, what can we do to keep the wheels of the economy running? Because we only have banks, strong banks, when the pie is bigger. If we have all banks chasing a shrinking pie, we'll get to a point where we'll get back to the crisis that we just came from. So the additional lending that you've seen, from our view at association level, we see it very, very positively. Because in crisis and in uncertain environments, you would have seen rather a dip. Even within the international banking arena, we've seen significant drop in risk assets. So unless there are some specific areas that we have not touched, from where we sit, we think we are being a very good support mechanism. And even in the government programs that have been announced, where we were not invited, we got ourselves deep within there so that the programs that come out become bankable projects that we can support. So as an industry, I think we don't want to be sounding our own nice jazz music, but we believe that we've done a human job so far.
So where have these funding been going? Does it have to do with the industries, pharmaceutical sector, hospitality, or my senior gentleman from the private schools that also need some capital?
So it's diverse. If you pick education, for instance, it was not more of additional funding to the education sector. It was more of how do you support the existing exposures so you do not foreclose when the avenue for payment actually doesn't exist. So a lot of educational institutions have had payment reprieves, some going as long as 1 year of repayment holidays, which is something that you hardly hear of. So in banking, it's not all everything about additional funding, but working with your customer. What else can you do? If where we are, Tank Palace, it was closed for close to 7 months. Assuming Tank Palace had 50 million loan, and the repayment source was to come from cash flows from operating the hotel. And because of COVID, they've had to do that. That cash flow drop is not a problem for Tank Palace alone, it's a problem for the bank that provided the financing as well. So we mimic the economy. So as people are talking about sufferings they've gone through, they are a reflection of potential issues in the banking sector as well. So we start with these customers, identified groups, and reprofile those that can be reprofiled, including staff of those institutions. So we can talk to even the administrators of this hotel and all the hotels around. Aviation, education, religious sectors, and all those other sectors that were directly, deeply impacted. But as has been said, it's not all bad news. There are sectors that had significant upscale in their operations as well. And those sectors, we provided additional funding to enable them to do the things that they've been talking on radio and on TV.
Thank you, Mr. I'll come back to you again. How about
Thank you. My name is IMANI-GIZ. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of African Continental Free Trade Area Policy Network. I'm here with my Executive Director, Lucy Alfo. So basically, thank you for the invite. Great program. I think the point is not to belabor so much the point about the challenges that we have, that have befallen us because of COVID-19. I think it's very well known. But of course, the more we talk about it, the more we can begin to unpack them. But let's also talk about some of the opportunities. I think for those of us who have been in a very important space of the regional integration space, monitoring things happening in Ghouta, Ghana-Nigeria relations, looking also at the development of the African Continental Free Trade Area. A lot of us were very crestfallen when we realized that in July we could not start trading with the African Continental Free Trade Area. So the question then would have been, so July, African Continental Free Trade Area did not commence. Okay, what's then? How then do you use the 6 or 7 months of the time before the elections to prepare Ghana as an important service capital? Maybe a new diplomatic capital that can rival Addis Ababa. A lot of people who have been to Addis can, talk about the challenges that Addis has. We have the advantage of lingua franca. We have English, we also own Pan-Africanism. All those things are quite clear. So then, we use this opportunity to say, look, let's begin to make lemonade from the lemons that we have. Which is to say, therefore, that what do we do in between those months to look at how to sensitize people about the African Continental Free Trade Area, to get governments to start really doing what they need to do on making sure that everybody from top down, from Ghanaian businesses to the people of the market, they begin to understand the impact of the Continental Free Trade Area. Because when the January 1st begins, everything is going to change as far as the diplomatic conversations on African Continental Free Trade Area is concerned. The traders are still going to be there, and we're going to have a totally new dynamic. What has been done? And if things have not been done, what then can we say about opportunities? For example, let me briefly talk about the $150 that is being charged by the government of Ghana to enter Ghana before, to enter Ghana because of COVID-19. We know about the different conversations that are being had already about the different charges and so on, but clearly it's a disservice to the hospitality industry. Do we consider the hospitality industry part of Ghanaian business? And if we do, why then have we slapped such a high fee on people entering the country? So I think these are some of the conversations that we need to have as well, even as we think through the impact on the local. Everything is going to change from 1st January. Let's not deceive ourselves. And let's begin having those conversations as well. Is $150 a realistic rate to charge for people to enter the country? Are we talking about how it's impacting hospitality industry, the hotels? All of us have friends who own hotels. How have they been impacted? You talked about Tank Palace being closed for 7 months, and so on and so forth. So let's have that conversation as well, in between these conversations.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So, consultant. It's very interesting, various presentations by the panelists and my co-conspirators to speak. I would like to advise my good friend Kudo, the next time such dialogue should be, it should all in the policymakers. We are talking about policy. The Osafo and German kings, those who matter, they should listen to both the problems and sources of this, how they've gone through. Personally, I run an investment consultancy. And for the policies that we are all talking about, the hospitality industry, the closure of the borders, especially the airports, have knocked my business out completely. I had 12 staff, the key staff are fell off them, and the rest have gone their way because we cannot support them. We rely solely on the services of foreign investors. We do help, this is how we make money. So for the past 9 months, 10 months, we have nothing. And this is what I had wanted to see Osafo explaining to me why and why. This is going to free ourselves from all these countries. That's why some people don't even believe that there's something like COVID and it's a make-up story.
Thanks so much, Mr. Morgan. Let me get quickly the thoughts. Of Professor Boke. Now I'll come to you. The recovery. I mean, the Bank of Ghana numbers are talking about recovery. Are this recovery at the macro level or the real economy recovery will take longer than we are telling ourselves?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think there's one box we haven't checked. As a country, what kind of recovery are we talking about? What kind of recovery are we looking forward to? We need to be clear. Because if you are not clear about the target, it's very difficult to say I've arrived. Okay, so because COVID really might have added some layers, but really has actually exposed our existing challenges, inequality, poverty of opportunity. So that is where we are. So I'm looking at it that, so government has been talking about recovery, and we are even saying that the numbers are picking up. To what end? So the pie we want to have at the end of the day, how does it look like? Does it represent Ghanaians? To the average Ghanaian, there's nothing national about the national cake. So is it a recovery that pulls people along? Or is the same jobless economic growth we had celebrated over the years? And I think if you look at Europe and the Scandinavian countries, they've moved beyond the GDP we are celebrating here. Okay, they've gone beyond the trickle-down effect that focus on the macro numbers, macroeconomic stability, who eats it. It's never on anybody's table, and it has never been pursued as an end in itself. It's only a means to an end. So we need to broaden the discussion a bit, okay? Because, so I sit at the University of Ghana. We are looking at this year, across the tertiary educational space, we are looking at over 25,000 people entering the labor market to begin national service. Where are they going? People are finishing. Look, the easiest way to become unemployed today is to go to university. That's the easiest route now to become unemployed in this country. Okay, so those are my concerns. Okay, and to be very honest with you, as I sat here, I was like, look, this evening I'm going to update my lecture notes. Because these are stories you will never get in any serious textbook. So this is the real deal. Okay, so the question is, how do we then shape the policy directions and put our monies where our mouths are in a manner that gives hope to almost everybody? But of course, when I talk about this, my frontmate is here. You know, when you pondered me, it was so many years ago.
Many years ago.
So now we are colleagues.
Thank you. Let's go.
My name is Edison. I'm a director at the Founder Institute, so please see us there. I just have two suggestions, conversations. One of them is about remote work and the opportunity of remote work. How, even with COVID-19, I think it gives Ghanaians and Africans an opportunities to either compete all over the world. So for my business, for instance, one of the things we did was we knew we couldn't go out to market, right? We couldn't really start to talk, to sell to people. We started to market to people outside the country. And one of the things that I did is that everybody's going remote. So what happens is that you can start to tap into this opportunity. So we got clients from Malta, from India, from countries that maybe not necessarily America, but the countries that maybe have similar, you know, economic climate and stuff like that, that would listen to you. So I think that's one opportunity that came out, is the fact that you can actually leverage on digital transformation. So businesses are beginning to start to think about, I mean, it's all over the world, but in Africa, I think we were not really ready. It's like we think that, oh, it's far away, but COVID has actually brought us to a place where we see that we can actually start to think about digital transformation. Because sometimes we think these things are far-fetched, but the world is moving with technology. The fact that Netflix, Apple, and the rest of them are the big companies, are like, they're bigger than even the world companies that we have today. It means that we need to start to focus not just on the basic things that we always focus on for the past 50 years, but how can we start to transform the continent by thinking about how do we transform ourselves digitally, and also emphasizing on remote work. The fact that when you have people work remotely, it means that they're not necessarily that they're cheaper, but we can actually have access to remote workers from outside the country, so that we're looking for skill sets that we don't have, we can actually tap into them as well, basically.
Thank you. Ministry.
Thank you very much, George. My name is Felix Nimapel. I work with Ghana's Online. When Mr. Jekia was speaking, he made a statement that some of their proprietors are facing prosecution from SNET because they've not been able to make their statutory payments and all that. I just spoke to SNET because that statement really hit me. So I just called them and asked them why they could be this callous, to be prosecuting people in these times. And then they told me that when in these times, what they are supposed to do is that they should apply to SNET so that they will give them something they call suspension, so far as they are not working. Meanwhile, some of the schools are working, some are having virtual tuition and all that, some are paying half salaries of their teachers and workers and all that, and they are paying they are making this payment to the organization. Also, others don't want to pay. Already they are not paying for a year or two, they are not paying. And these are the people that they are rather prosecuting. So I think he should rather find out from his members and also know the realities on the ground. I'm not saying that he is not privy to all the info, but maybe they are just using the COVID as, a backup to
as an excuse.
Yes, as an excuse to do what they are supposed to
so
do.
So you should apply to state for some relief as well. I'll get a start on that one. Yes, let's look at the questions. Yeah.
Thank you. Mine is a question that I just wanted to ask maybe all of us that must we always be in a pandemic before there will be stimulus packages? Look at the US. My attention is that we should focus on applied research and what we call early stage finance. Let's take two critical companies in the US as an example. If you take Google, before it started its research on the algorithm, they got funding from a public institution from the US. Tulsa, all the three companies was funded by the energy of the US. It's time for African economies and government to identify companies and powerful centers like this, make them strong, giant, like the Alzenicas. So when there's issues in pandemic, whatever it is, they can lead the way. I asked the Business and Financial Times, anytime I try to assess New York Times. This time around, I'm not giving us a have to pay a subscription. I don't know whether you have set up something like that. Thank you.
Workshop. My name is Nate Tokole. I operate in this waste management sector, a sector that in our part of the world, very little attention, no value almost is given to it. But it is a whole storehouse of potential to create secondary and tertiary materials that have positive impact on climate change and also can impact on how the depletable resources can be replenished. I mean, most of the waste management companies were very greatly adversely impacted. All human endeavor takes place within it. And what we do is mainly preventive. But although the Imposition of Restrictions Act defined us as essential service providers, which enjoined us to continue delivering services, when it came to the stimulus packages, there was nothing. In my company, for example, my sources of revenue is based on the polluter pays principle. So whilst industries and businesses scale down operations, it means our inflows were affected. Our revenue reduced by almost 60%, but we had to continue working. So what did we do? We had to re-strategize our operational model depending on less expensive equipment to continue delivering the services, and then using larger volume complex equipment to do the long distance haulages. I think the one opportunity that this gives us is to draw attention to the policymakers so that they start creating the infrastructure for waste valorization, which I think I should say that my company has been trailblazers in doing that. But we have to suspend most of our piloted successful projects upscaling because of the dwindling in cash flows. We have been surviving on our own steam with little support from government, but our bankers have supported us greatly. We couldn't access the NBSSI, but our bankers are trying to do something for us. Because we didn't have sufficient money, I'm lacking about 2-3 months in paying staff. But they are still working. We are getting to a point where morale is going down and it's affecting discipline. If they misbehave, you cannot discipline because then the whole business would have to shut down. And if we'll take a lesson and develop the waste management sector, the sanitation sector very well, it is possible that it can become the third line of gold or the third gold mine for the country. So
the name of your company?
The name of my company is Jekwara Ventures, and about 2 years ago, we were the only company that performed satisfactorily based on assessment by the AMA. Thank you for advertising my company.
Thank you so much, sir. Domestic investment and how to switch investment around in these times when the likes of Mr. Kujo business and the rest are struggling these times. Not just about FDIs as well, but how do you even direct some of these FDIs to critical sectors of the economy that are looking forward to partnership and then support as well?
More importantly, it provides an opportunity for us to begin to harness whatever we have seen, because it shows the cracks that we are deficient on this, and for businesses it also showed the deficiency on the strategic directions and then the risk management profiles that most of them had. So when the COVID-19 hit, it just got everybody running helter-skelter. So COVID-19 also presents a bigger opportunity, because even as we go on to hit the ACTA, one thing we're going to ask ourselves when the floodgates open for ACTA. So this is more like I asked you to say an outlawing. It's telling us what is likely to happen if we don't fix the cracks that COVID-19 has revealed. By the time AFTA rolls out, we might actually be out of business even as other entities begin to enter our space. So even as we look at the issues that it revealed, the next question is, how do we deal with those? And that should be the way forward for what we discuss. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Doc.
One component of our work sits in business psychology. So we are more into how the psychology of employees hits the bottom line. And we're doing some work with the COVID and then how some companies seem to be resilient as of this time, even from COVID time to now. And a few of the submissions as I hear seems to shift to the space of let's make sure the system is resilient. The little work we've done with a few of the clients we have shows that actually resilient companies are coming from the resilient employees. So the companies that actually had inspired employees before COVID were more or less like ready for anything. Because for all the things that we are discussing here, truly speaking, we are only saying it. We are not sure it will happen exactly the same way. So when the unpredictable happens, it's only the resilient employees that are able to bring up ideas, innovations, creativity. So I think it's a huge opportunity for the businesses here. This pandemic, from the trends as you have seen it, it looks like it will go, it will not go. It may even go and come back. When it comes back, you are not sure what you will do. It's the employees that are likely to come up with ideas and innovations that will direct the organization. So the point I'm making here is, even as you try to look at your structures and systems, it could be very strategic for you to now start to look critically at how to get your employees inspired. It's not enough for them to be engaged. Inspired means at this time, like Google, they'll be thinking of what can happen in the next 20 years. It may or may not happen. It's when it happens, then you have such employees around you. Even if it's less than 10%, you are way, way, way ahead. And that's the perspective I wanted to bring in.
Last question, 2 minutes.
From Impact Shoes GH. Yes, the reality with this COVID situation, private sector did a lot of donations to the public sector, that is the government. But I think that going forward, those institutions that are big enough can also look up to the smaller ones. This donation can go to some of the small and medium scale institutions, can grow it, and then it can also become bigger and better than always giving back to government as they did. Some of us, we are not happy about that.
Thank you. I mean,
and just permit me a couple of minutes to illustrate. There was 2009, if I remember, big disaster at Graspo Stadium, Kotoka House match. May 9th. Has anything really changed about the way we manage our stadium? Flood at Kwame Nkrumah Circle, people died when there was a fire at Goyle. Hasn't there been another fire again at the pedestrian market? So disaster has never really changed us as a people. We are known not to learn our lessons. This type of disaster is a pandemic. It just happens to be global, and so we are all focused on it. But will it really change? Let me just look around this room to make it very easy. GIBC just spoke, foreign direct investment, so we are doing our job. Good. Is that really our job? What about local direct investments? Where is the data? Is there any direction showing that GIB has changed this thinking in this redirection of supply chains to say that this is the data regarding local direct investments and the direction we are going over the next decade? I haven't heard that. Maybe she has the data, and I mean, I work with them and we are always arguing. We need to have a strategic change of our thinking. Without that, nothing is going to happen. We are holding this session because of the support of GIZ. Otherwise, IMANI is going to dry down. Apart from a few like Senor, and I must commend you, the effort you put together in building, helping build infectious disease center. That's private sector action. We need more of that. But you look around this room and just say if anything will change. And I will make a surprising analysis that will surprise you. The chair you are sitting on is not made in Ghana. I don't have any doubt about that. I can look at the chair and I can see the pass. The shoe you are wearing, I'm not so sure whether it's made in Ghana. Even if it is, the leather was imported. The socks is not made in Ghana. The trousers is not made in Ghana. The tie, the shirt, the watch is not made in Ghana. The microphone is not made in Ghana. The curtain behind you is not made in Ghana. The carpet, the wood, the microphone, the screens, apart from the water, the labor, and the cement and the sand, nothing was made in Ghana. Has anything really changed COVID as a result of the disaster? PPEs and is it N95 mask, those will stop, we stop using them by 2022. They are temporary businesses. And we should stop deceiving ourselves about the long-term redirection of supply chains into this country until we make a fundamental change in thinking and say we are going to do this and localize it, until we stop measuring GDP and measuring gross national product. You have foreign direct investments. What it means is that the results will be repatriated and your currency will suffer. Until you make that change, when Buta will now not be importing from China and say they heard that the COVID was coming from China, they may be importing from Nigeria or Togo and exporting to Togo. Until you realize that food consumption, urban food consumption in Africa has grown from $15 billion per annum to $35 billion as at yesterday. And is expected to grow to $110 billion by 2025 and $150 billion by 2030. The gentleman here who adds value to YAP, if he cannot supply 20,000 orders, how is he going to supply 20,000 metric tons if AFC, FTA starts and the order booms? He cannot. Because we are not laying the basis for consolidation and aggregation or supporting him to do that. So nothing is changing. COVID-19 is only an example of our failure. And unless we realize that it is a lesson for us to change our thinking and move forward, we will come back 3 years and have the same conversation. Thank you.
Your discussion, thank you so much. Your discussion about economy and all the rest. And I think you're talking about happiness index and even having a minister for happiness and all the rest. You think that we should review this whole per capita income measurement and all the rest?
In my organization, I have a happiness committee. But strategy belongs to the rank of the ladder you occupy. I didn't have that 10 years ago, now I do. I don't believe that Ghana should be thinking about happiness index at this stage. I think we should be thinking across domestic products. I think we should be organizing conferences on domestic investments. I am not against foreign direct investors, but until your domestic investors grow, I mean, just look at AGI and I can't remember of AGI Council. Our thinking is a problem as a business sector in Ghana. I'm always arguing, we've been doing business barometer index for so long. I will stop doing it. Why? Because I will look at not the business confidence that we measure every quarter, which is good, but with COVID, I look at what government procures. Government is the largest buyer of goods, works, and services. Goods, works, and services, which of them has government directly directed should go to local consumers in numbers? That is what I want to measure. So every quarter, I want to see how AGI members are getting more of the businesses. Without that, GDP is not going to help you. That's the point. That's why COVID will drop your GDP from 6.8 to 0.9. That's the point. Look, businesses which are going to survive the AFCFTA are businesses which have got internalized business-to-business relationship and buy from each other. They are the ones who will suffer less from COVID. I think we are seeing COVID as if it is the whole. COVID is a trigger of weaknesses that have existed in the system for so long. That's what we should realize.
Doc, it looks like nothing will change and it will still be good time importing from China, or you're looking at sourcing from local industries as well.
Yeah, I've told you, we have always wanted to buy from local sources. But what are we getting? I just told you our import requirement, we can only get about 10%, not only from Ghana, but the whole of West Africa. So what are we going to buy? And we have the responsibility also to serve you, get the shortfall of the about 90%. And so that's why it shows the relevance of the trading community. But I believe going forward for the continental free trade area, we have to also look at the exposure that the COVID brought us to bear. The things that we couldn't even have. Had it continued, the lockdowns, especially for China, have gone 6 months. Were we going to be able to sustain ourselves in terms of essential commodities and all that? We should look at those exposures and find way that those that we have competitive edge, we found the sources, the financing, encouraging manufacturers to start producing internally. That's exactly what we have to be doing. But then, we cannot go into continental free trade where our cost of borrowing is that high. Let me give you the events following the pandemic have actually, the lockdowns, the social distancing protocols and all that have actually taken us to a situation that most of businesses have gotten their capital depleted. And how are we going to replenish this? Our sources, our suppliers used to give us suppliers credit, but they are also challenged at this time. They can't give us these credits again. We have to look from within and get these credits. But the cost of borrowing is very high. Now, all that businesses need at this point in time is access to affordable credit, for which we are not getting here. How are we going to be able to get? Now, the banker is here. They have the chief executive. Yes.
Association of Bankers.
The benchmark rate comes down, and normally it does not even pull along the commercial rate. What does that mean? And this is what essentially businesses need if we can be relevant in the continental free trade. We have to be at the supply end rather than be on the receiving end. Please, all that businesses need at this point in time. Let me give you a scenario. The fact that the stimulus package was earmarked for about 200,000 people. That's what NBSSI said. It was oversubscribed. More than 850,000 people subscribed to it. It shows how people need a funding for their businesses. How a subsidized one, not the commercial rate, the 23%, 22% that we have it. If we have to be relevant in business again, cost of borrowing should be very minimized and affordable. Thank you.
Mr. Hosi, I mean, when you hear Mr. Hosi that, are you worried that it will be the same and nothing will change in terms of the policies created?
The money is not lying. I won't get you that. The money is not lying. I'm an economic policy analyst. And I lost a roommate at that particular stadium disaster. Pulime is so rest in peace, and we never learned anything, and that's what it is. Nothing is going to change. Even amidst COVID, how much change do we think we are experiencing? We're only grateful to God that COVID, the Chinese sent us the invitation version, like they often do. And we thank them for that. That they forgot that. They just maintained the memo. It would have been a total disaster. That has created a window for us. What reforms do we need? Who is doing that futuristic thinking? Who is doing that strategic thinking? I'm telling you, there's little to none of it happening. This is what led me into my legal matter. Alright? But I mean, the professors are here. Fourth Industrial Revolution, they will teach it in the textbook. But how much of that will they apply in changing the ways of teaching and equipping students for the future? Zero. And that reflects who we are as Ghanaians. We actually are just preparing for what people will test us in the short term. Just like the way we write our exams. We learn to pass exams, not learn to know. In the process, we get some things. The orientation, the cultural position must totally change. And he's right, we can't keep talking GDP. Nobody eats GDP. How are you looking at the development of your people? So you have to be talking about your gross national income. We talk about the income generated by your people, but it can't end there. You have to discuss your Gini index to see how well distributed that wealth is. Because if the inequality factors don't show that the GNI itself is well, you know that you have a problem. You need to look at poverty, and you really need to look at true employment, not that kind of employment you have been calculating at GSSS. It is respectfully, I can't use the word here. You can't meet somebody on the road, and if you have collected some thing for the last 2 days, 3 days, that means that you say that that person is employed. If you want to see proper employment, let's go and see what is happening at net. And see the number of people who are registered there. How is that increasing? How are we interested in trying to formalize our economy so that policy interventions can be structured and impactful? Because it will be properly data backed. Zero is not going to happen. And employment is at the heart of everything. We are in Africa. We have about 100 million people who are waiting for us in unemployment over the next 10 years. And that's 12 million coming every year. And Ghana is a significant contributor. And you are right, the fastest way to be unemployed in this country is to go to the university. That is the fastest way, especially if you don't go and learn how to drive to, at least you can drive Uber. You understand? There's a problem because we are just creating people, not preparing them for a certain level of functionality, because nobody did that strategic thinking to see what kind of skills will be required at this time. How is our education structured to meet that need at this time? Today, you have university students in the University of Ghana without a computer. How can that make sense? How can that make sense? It's like telling me that you're a science student in secondary school at university level without a calculator. Since when did you become Einstein on your own? You get it? So there is no thinking happening. I prefer to be seen more of a farmer than what you want to call me. And I'm in the agri value chain. I have infrastructure investments in storing stuff. We have the president visit my farm. All kinds of commitments are made by politicians. Today, zero. I have, on the back of these expectations, carried 100 people, invested millions of dollars in this matter, and expecting extra support so that we can actually scale, so we can be viable when and after comes, so nobody like that comes to sweep us off tomorrow. And today, I have to lay people off. And I'm still holding on tight to people. Because for me, business is not just profits, it's lives. And you can't forget that. But what policy structure is being developed to sustain that kind of investment that I have? I wrote a letter to the Ministry of Agriculture. After the Deputy Minister was there with about 6 cabinet ministers. And I said, these are ways we can collaborate to really grow and develop this sector, because they asked for it to. Not a reply since January or February this year, not a reply up to now about this is how we can partner and help you grow. Because we need proper policy interventions, which in some cases are not just money, but zero, no concern. But we just be cutting PFG here and there. And then we have this whole infrastructure sitting down, and little productivity to zero productivity, no structured support to really get people who are putting their skin in the game to really get a return. And you know, you got plenty, 100,000, blah, 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 people at MPF. A lot of them are not people going there with a real business intent. Let's be honest about it. A lot of folks felt it was another party opportunity to cash in on funds. Just like we have seen with Maslow, just like we've seen all those kinds of politics-backed interventions. With the Ghanaian people, there's something wrong with us. You understand? We have a problem, and everybody's looking for a quick fix for just himself. And that is also reflecting on the politics that we have. Because the politicians don't also give us good examples. And in that process, we are gradually driving this country to a halt. I am very, very embarrassed by what I think this country will be like in the next 10 years. If anybody is honest about it himself, how divisive it is, where we are really going. Nobody knows where we are going. We know we are waking up one morning, we know we will sleep. That's all that happens in this country. And that's why he's telling you that nothing is going to change because there's no strategic positioning, there's no proper strategic communication to carry along the people, to really focus the people on areas that will transform this country. I'm landing. Watch something. The base of policy, everybody says sits in the root of it will actually sit with politics. But the base of it is the economy. And what's in your economy? You make money from what you produce and what income you generate from that. It is from that you're able to take care of your children. You're right, you don't get something from nothing. You're a thief. That's what it means. What are we producing? What investment are we making in our training, in our education, and aligning all the policy areas to make sure that we are going to competently be producing things to survive in the future? I don't see it. And when people like us try to do something, we always end up being left alone, unless of course we also join the party folks, and we won't. We are business people trying to help change lives, drive sustainability for our country, and that is totally missing.
Thank you, Senior.
But if it's time to chop money there, we know how to do it.
When you hear some of these concerns, and for you, in terms of the outlook and the opportunities as well, are you worried about the future of the business as well?
I do get worried. But the only constant thing is change, right? In all of this, I have hurt myself in all of them. I've had to make very hard decisions and change some of the things I do. I was all about bulk distribution, giving it to supermarket chains, and just sit there, structured stuff so that in 2 weeks, in 21 days, in 30 days, and the wicked ones who pay us after 90 days, will pay us, and I can do my business. I couldn't deal with the small ones who I have to go and chase for the money. So I had to now make a change, which was very difficult. But I am lucky to have a personal coach who is almost like a psychologist and everything. So when I get home and I start ranting, then he comes in with the psychology. So I have to go back and do the communication with my employees. So every day, when I get the lectures at home, then I go back and then I also transfer it to them. So my husband is Mr. Ebipong of Lead It, he just spoke. Yeah, so I Thank you. So I transferred that to them. I do a lot of communication. Just when COVID hit, we trained ourselves. He was there. Sometimes he's on my case. I'm a hands-on person, so I want to get into the thick of it and do it. I'm like, I don't have the time, but he will come anyways. Sit down, we do that. And I have to be able to transfer it to them so they understand. So when things were getting hard, they were ready to come and sleep at the factory. So things go on. I had to pack my own car and use the company van and pick some of them up so we go together. We had to make really hard decisions. I had to now start doing retail. And in all of this, what I've learned is that there is always a silver lining somewhere. Sometimes I make 10% margins on the things I do, and the big supermarket chains make about 50%. Now I wasn't doing just business B2B, I was doing B2C. So my margins also went up. So even though I was spending more to get things going, I was also making a bit more to take care of that cost.
Thank you. Mr. Yetua, are you looking at making some requests to SNIT and the other institutions to give you some relief to you and your members as well, since you're getting some education here?
Thank you very much. I think that submission, or let's say the contribution my brother brought up, is not what is really happening on the ground. Because
but have you made any requests to these institutions that matter for reliefs and some space?
On the 23rd of March.
What did your brother say?
My brother was saying that SNIT people are saying that we have to ask
for release. Or
yes, but what prevents SNIT to publish this information out? That is a fact. What prevents SNIT to know that these are the arrangements that we have or interventions put in place? The fact is that on 23rd of March, we wrote to the presidency and copied SNIT on this issue. Till date, they have not even come out with that. We've chased them to even come out with a communique detailing that these are some of the issues. Why do you go ahead and prosecute somebody that has his or her work has been shut down almost a year? Even if the person is having any arrests or what? You see, this is the reason why over, let's say, the last time that was somewhere in May, we checked, over 94,000 teachers has been sacked. Because keeping the teachers in your books, it means that you have to fulfill these issues. You understand? And nobody is ready to face it. Yesterday, it was in our office that somebody came in with a letter. The person has already been written to SNIT. I have to even speak to the national prosecutor. And he is saying that we are doing our work and all that. We were talking about flexibility in terms of regulations. And if you have, as an institution, you have developed this intervention, you just come out and publish it. That these are some of the things that we are doing. And it becomes known to everybody. My brother, let's move on and see how best we can support, or let's say, the private education. With the private schools, we know that in terms of quality education, we are there. And we've taken 4 revolutionary change in our dealings. But some of the issues definitely will even face some of the parents. Because we know that these parents are also coming from all diverse businesses, that their businesses are not also going on well. But we have to do, one thing we are, let's say, working on it is corporate governance. Private education has been a way that I have set up my school and doing this and that and that and that. But we have come in, and with the COVID, we've seen that there's a need to come out with a policy that will harness or underpin the practices of corporate governances in our schools. The other one is to build the infrastructures, that is technological infrastructures. So we are working with some companies, collaborators, to give us some tablets, laptops to be given to the teachers and the students. So wherever they are, we can now work, get in touch with them. The other one that I think that is all what my colleagues here are saying is the content. Sometimes I sit down and realize that what are we doing as a nation? Because if we have basically 5 phases of education in terms of the curriculum development, Ghana is on the first phase, that is the prime focus, where it focuses on the behavioral enhancement and content-based, or let's say the pen and paper tests. But if you go to Finland, Singapore, they are doing the 4th stage that focuses on nomadic thinking. The child is left where you think to find out solutions to whatever you are doing right from the onset. And teachers are there as facilitators. But here, we are not doing that. So that is the era that the private schools want to venture, where, let's say, common soft skills, career development is brought into the curriculum that we are doing. We realize that we are now about to even give out this CCP, that's the Common Core Program, that is being campaigned that, oh, we are changing the curriculums, we are doing that, we are doing that. But if you look at it critically, we are not bringing any value to the educational system.
Okay. Thanks so much, sir. Doc, in Dankwa, I mean, from the economic forums, are we going to look at more business coaching programs as well? Because it looks like a lot of the business out there need some strategy to survive the tough times ahead.
I think we do. We do a lot of these things. Platforms like this, discussing. I'm a bit worried because the Economic Forum has been running for the past 10 years. And we're still talking about the same issues we talk about.
Nothing has changed.
Nothing has changed. So as I sat, listening to all the submissions, I kept asking myself, where's the problem? What is our problem? Is it cultural? And if it is, what are we doing about it? We sat here discussing this. There are so many opportunities in this country. We just spoke about after. We are here talking about after and the opportunities. How can we go down there for the average person to understand what the opportunities are? I haven't seen this happening. I don't know if it's happening, on my blind side. But I'm thinking the average trader or the average person who produces, let's say, clothes. Now that industry is doing well. But how are we sensitizing people to take advantage of the opportunities that we have? So I am a bit worried, and I'm asking myself, so what can be done? Education-wise, we spoke about critical thinking. Are we doing critical thinking sessions with our students? We are talking about opportunities. Businesses, people, about 25,000 or so graduates who will be looking for jobs in the next few months. What are they going to do?
In addition to the 25 that passed last year.
Exactly. So, let me just come back to business and keep it simple.
Yes.
Because I don't want to confuse myself. I think businesses we need to do the right things. COVID just came in to test how resilient businesses are or were. Those who couldn't stand the shocks went down. Those who survived and learned from it, yes, it's an opportunity. Is it an opportunity for us to just do things differently, or just think that, okay, in the next 6 months, COVID is over and then it's business as usual? So from corporate governance in our organizations right down to capacity building, the people we work with, what are we doing differently to ensure that we're building resilient, no matter how small or big your business is, the right things have to be done. And if you're doing the right thing, there's no way COVID can keep, because some companies have survived COVID. Why did some go down? And what are we learning? It's so easy for us to sit on platforms like this and blame others. I take things personally. And I'm thinking, what have we done differently? And how do we ensure that if another COVID-19 comes in a different form or shape, the company won't be affected? So I think that beyond government, we keep saying the same things. Asking government to come to our aid, to support us, to do. But beyond that, as organizations, as businesses, whether small or big, what are we doing differently to ensure that we're running resilient and sustainable businesses in a way that, as individuals, we save. Most of us don't have the culture of savings, but we know the right thing to do is to save. So if the company is an entity different from its owners, we must guide the company to be strong, such that when something hits, reserves in 3 months will be strong enough to stand the test of time. So it's easy to blame it on COVID, but I am saying this because of the experiences I have gone through, because I know very well that there were certain things that we didn't do right. And so it taught us a lesson to do the right things. And I know most businesses don't do the right things. And it's easy to blame government. We do that so well. And maybe it's also partly because of our culture, the cultural thing. We blame others for our woes. So it has to change. Our mindset, and I heard that, I think David mentioned that as well, and you also mentioned it. The mindset has to change. And why do we do that from maybe our homes we can't do it, but from schools. And if we identify and realize that as a country we have a problem, then we have to address that problem. We know we have a problem. So charity begins at home. The solution is there, but sometimes we don't have the will.
We haven't defined the problem. You are a lecturer. You are dean. I'm not putting you on the spot as in your person. We all know who you are. How much of this kind of thinking goes on in there? So this is the caliber of student we want to create and put values like integrity, like blah blah blah. I mean skills like creativity and making sure our curricula and our way of education and entire frame is factored in there. Zero. As parents, we wake up in the morning, we have to think about, who is sitting and make a strategic plan for his child.
Before they get to that stage, they will have formed their habits.
Oh, I disagree with you on that. I disagree. I've seen good habits go and destroy the university.
Okay, let's
the one that was powerful places you have. I'm not saying it's the only place.
We have a time challenge. Don't wrap up and let's quickly get to. So in a minute, yeah.
So my humble advice is that businesses should do the right thing. We need advisory services to support businesses, but let's do the right thing. I can bet you, most people who went in for these loans, they will not pay. I heard some say that this is free money, it's our money, it's Ghana government, it's our money, so let's go for it. So that is why the banks are sometimes so rigid. They don't want to help businesses because you go in for the money and you will not pay.
Thanks so much, Doc. Thank you. But also that I'm giving you a minute.
Yes, I just want to draw attention to something so we don't confuse them. We shouldn't confuse the success and innovation of individual businesses. Thank you. And the people sitting up here, everybody has done in his own right. I mean, we shouldn't confuse that at all. With the national sources upon which individual businesses can thrive more. And we mix the two. If we mix the psychology of an individual successful business which has done very well, and we mix that with the national where there is no strategy, because if there is a national strategy, you can pick the young producer, the BFT, and make them a Pan-African and a global business. That is how the Toyotas, the Mitsubishis, where you import things from, and I have the data. That's how it grows.
I don't understand lessons going forward that your business will survive the next 10 years? Or your model will survive the next 10 years?
Yes, we will not just survive, but we will thrive. And the reason why I say that is that one of the key things that helped us in this time is the fact that we have visibility on our supply chain. We had actually, right from the onset, disintegrated and built the network of our supply chain. So, as a matter of fact, we have even taken care of the production as of now. We're going to be using an outgrower model, which is going to ensure that we rope in the communities within which we operate, so that they can supply, but on our terms. Because a lot of the time we want to believe that, oh, we are going out to help people, we are helping this one do that, but we sometimes forget the fact that we are running businesses. And if you're running a business, there are different principles that govern it. It is different from a charity. So, and that's one of the things that I think work for us, the fact that we have visibility on our supply chain. But like my senior fellow made mention of, to be able to develop businesses to be global, to be conglomerates, to be multinationals, it requires a conscious effort, to which, sadly, I don't see that happening in Ghana. I don't see any institution being able to give me data that I would value. Because majority of the data that is given, trust me, I sometimes get onto, for instance, street platforms and all that. It's about 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I don't see any country that can develop effectively and efficiently and make all the strides that we're talking about without data. And that is one thing. And the other part of it also is that we seem to have an influx of awards. Yeah, almost everywhere you go, there's an award this, award that, and then you hear this one, an incubation center, that incubation, and then you see agri-tech, that, and And I keep wondering, look, technology is an enabler. If your systems and your practices, your standards, everything is not working, technology is just going to make rubbish of everything that you have done. Pardon my language, but it's a fact. So I think that there's a lot that we need to do to be able to build businesses effectively. And that is why I actually believe that when you look at what MBSSI is doing with the various advisory services that they provide at the various districts and all that, there's a very big disconnect. Because as a matter of fact, I don't think I can walk into any of these offices and they'll be able to tell me what is happening in another district, even though they may be having a representative there.
Even their own district, the data is not correct.
You know. So as a matter of fact, if we're going to be able to develop ourselves and develop businesses to be like the Nestle's, to be like the Toyotas and all that, it requires a conscious, concerted effort to be able to do that.
And since you have the last word, is the environment that exciting for you that you have a future, or you have to take your destiny to your own?
I think after 10 years of doing this, sometimes, you just do what you have to do. You don't look at the system. The system, sometimes it feels like the system has been set up to frustrate you. We recently wanted a tax clearance certificate, and then we go to GRE, and they don't have our records. Meanwhile, at the end of every month, we are paying our taxes.
You don't mean it?
I think that's
all right, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean it. And you ask me to bring my records. You don't have
no
my records.
way. That won't happen. You have to bring it.
You see, so then you sort of ask yourself what's going on. The pandemic it taught us that there are a lot of opportunities here, okay? Now, we've exported or shipped out more of the country than in the past. Within these last few months, we've done a lot of shipping. Now, if I want to ship, and I want to grow our industries, the Ghanaian industries, if I want to ship something else and I go to, and I want to use Ghana Post, I need to go there to get a quotation before I can give to my client. So someone contacts us on WhatsApp or on our website and then says, I want to buy a handbag. Now, if I call Ghana Post, I'm not going to get a quotation for a shipment. I need to go there for them to weigh the item. Yes. But you have other foreign courier services who have already given you, kilos, weights, everything. They would actually come and pick up from you and ship up. Imagine if every single person in this room, we all want change. I see my good friend Tony Senaya at the back. If everyone in this room was wearing a made in Ghana shoe.
I wear shoes.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay. If we all owned an Osman shoe, or if we all owned an M-Sim handbag, we wouldn't have imported handbags or shoes. We'd be growing a leather industry. But ask yourself, what do we do with the leather? We don't even have a leather tannery in Ghana. So we are manufacturing here, but all the raw materials are imported. We all dress beautifully here, but then how many of us are wearing clothes made in Ghana? So the change starts with us. Yes, I saw your handbag, yes.
And I'm wearing chocolate.
Yeah, exactly, yes. So yes, we are doing well, but we can do better. The change starts with us. It starts with the mindset. When the gentleman from the Banking Association was talking, he mentioned that it was until recently that people were using the apps. Payment platforms have been made available for long, but everyone wants to buy with cash. Until the pandemic, people, when you're doing a delivery, everyone said, okay, when the dispatch rider comes, I'm going to give him cash. But what has it taught us? We can actually, pay digitally. So the systems are there, but are we ready as a people to use it, to utilize it? We are talking about the trade agreements and everything, but come to think of it, it has a good side, it has its bad sides. When it comes to skilled labor, we all know the attitude of the Ghanaian worker, most Ghanaian skilled workers. We all know that some people, especially those in the clothing industry, are bringing people from the French countries to work. because the attitude to work is poor. Are we ready for that? So yes, we want change, but then change starts with every single one of us in this room. For policy, we are going to talk. After 10 years, sometimes I don't even want to be on these platforms because there's a lot of talk, but nothing is really happening. The system frustrates you. I'll learn soon. When we started making the face mask, every year that's what? We're going to register the face mask. They're going to test, we're charging a certain amount of fees, okay? We made a lot of noise about it. Fees were reduced. So you go register your product, everything. Now, after the lockdown, we saw people selling face masks on the street. FDA approved? No. I would have gone to register my product. The cost of production is high because one, I've paid fees, I'm paying what is required of me. Someone from FDA calls and says that I need to have my label, and I was like, don't come and add more cost to what I've already incurred. Those on the street, have you gone to apprehend them? And the response I got was no, because he said that what, even those of us who've been registered, we can't meet the demand. So then why ask me to come and pay in the first place? So you want to do the right thing. You don't want to be on the bad side of the law, but it's frustrating. You don't make any money out of it if you want to do the right thing as a business person. So there are people who cut corners. You are doing the right thing, but you're not making anything. You're being penalized for it. The law doesn't protect you.
Thank you so much, James. It's a round of applause for our panelists here. Indeed, change starts with us. We live with these ministers, we live with these directors, they are friends, we chat with them and all the rest, and we can talk, and I think we'll get some results. Please don't forget to fill the questionnaire for us before we wrap the program up. I have to draw the curtain down yet. Mr. Kujo, I'll let you have the last word here. I hope you've been excited. The debate has gone on, but this is just the beginning in terms of making the change. I believe in talking sometimes, but who are we talking to push for the actions to be done on our behalf? So, Franklin, over to you.